Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. So today I'm going to sketch a herring gull in two different poses, and I'm starting in my sketchbook with a quick rough sketch, just the basic shapes of the bird to help me find out the proportions. And you can see this is a classic gull pose, so to speak. Yeah, I'm refining my pencil lines a little bit, adding a few edges here and there, because actually birds are not just these oval shapes, they have these interesting edges at some points in their bodies. I'm adding a few outlines for the feathers and a little bit of detail around the eye. And I'm going to take this into watercolors in just a minute, so these are just really preliminary sketches. And I've sped up the sketching process a little bit for you here because I know that pencil is usually a bit harder to see. So as you can see, I'm already switching into watercolors at this point, and I'm blotting out the pencil lines a little bit more around the lighter areas of the beak. So this herring gull has a yellow bill, which I'm laying in, so it's a yellow orangey color. And I'm trying to put in more of a darker color and this little red dot at the base of the bill. And then I'm adding a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red around the eye because they have this interesting eye ring. Now I'm mixing up sort of a dark gray, almost a black, to indicate the primary feathers that are sort of tucked underneath the wing and pointing towards the tail. And you can see for the tail feathers I just washed out my brush, diluted the black a little bit to get a lighter gray. And here I have mixed up a sort of a dirty pastel pink for the feet, and again I'm blotting out a little bit with a kneaded eraser so that the pencil lines aren't too prominent. I'm just laying down a little bit of color for the feet. Now I'm using a mixture of my gray and a little bit of ultramarine in just a very diluted mixture to add a bit of shadowing. So the gulls are mostly white, and I want to pick up a little bit of the shadow that I can see in my reference, so that you can actually see some of the planes on the bird, so that it becomes a three-dimensional body. And here I'm mixing my gray with a little bit of gouache white from my palette to a more medium gray for the wing and the scapular region. And you can see I'm trying to quickly lay in the wash and define a little bit of the brighter regions and pick up color from that again. And you can easily correct some of the areas that you painted earlier if you use your clean brush with a little bit of water and scrub out these areas and sort of pick up the color or move it around with a brush. And this is what I'm doing here. I'm adding just a little bit of paint and actually pick up a lot of the paint that I laid out earlier, just to make the bird look a little bit more three-dimensional. And here I'm using colored pencils to help me draw those fine lines around the eye and the iris. So gulls have this mean stare usually when they're eyeing you or eyeing your food and just waiting for a weak moment. And yeah, here I'm using the same gray mixture that I had earlier with a little bit of white added so that it is more opaque to give the wings this middle gray look. And I'm just indicating the feather patches. I'm not noodling in every single feather, just trying to keep it loose. Most of the time, really, I'm softening up areas and lines that I painted earlier to give the bird more of a feathery look and not too harsh lines. I'm adding a little bit of detail around the eye and the bill with my colored pencil. and the claws in with dark pencil. And a few lines around the wings. And as a last step, I'm intensifying the red and the yellow of the bill a little bit more. And that's my finished sketch of the herring gull. For the second pose, I've chosen sort of a portrait look that I can fit underneath the first sketch. And you can see here, again in my quick outline sketch, I'm trying to get the planes right. So I'm trying to think of the bird's head and the bill as a three-dimensional object with different planes that are pointing in different directions. And this helps me to achieve an effect of three-dimensionality. And while I'm going, I'm correcting the lines that I laid down earlier. So make sure when you sketch that you don't lay down any harsh lines in the beginning. Just keep it very loose and light so that you can correct what you've drawn. And in some areas, I'm tightening up the sketch a little bit. So this gull is sort of looking over his shoulder a little bit, if you want. And now I'm switching to watercolor. I'm using a mixture of ultramarine blue and gray to add shadows, and I'm starting with light shadow areas or middle values. And you will see in a minute that right at the beginning I put down this really dark shadow around the eye that's a little bit too dark, but I will correct it at the very end of the sketch. So the light on this, there's the dark patch. And the light on this gull comes from behind, so you will see very dark, intense shadows at the front of the gull. Here I'm adding yellow for the bill. Again, this bright red dot at the base of the bill. And I'm diluting my paint and sort of just spreading it out to the front of the bill where it's a little bit lighter. And adding a little bit of a muddy green tone for the iris. And for the rest of the shadow areas, you can see I'm just dropping in some brush strokes here and there, not really adding any detail, but just adding a hint of shadow. Here I'm painting in the eye ring, this sort of brown reddish color that again gives the bird this sort of mean stare. Adding in the iris. And now he's looking back at us. And I'm adding another layer of blue-black for the shadow, which is really quite harsh. Here I'm adding an even darker blob in the eyeshadow, which I will remove later. And a lot of watercolor painting is really just figuring out values. It's really more important than anything related to color, really. So if you get the values right, then you have a convincing sketch or a convincing painting. This is really the most important part of your sketch, is getting the values right. And fortunately with watercolor you can correct quite a lot of this. You have seen me adding paint, lifting out paint until I get the effect I want. So it's really, really workable and versatile in that regard. I'm adding a second layer on the bill. More yellows, more less intense yellows, so sort of a little bit of raw sienna so that it doesn't jump out at you as much. So now finally I'm taking away a little bit of the harsh shadow that sits in front of the eye, and you can see how it gets better every second I do this. Now I'm refining the bill a little bit more. And that's my finished portrait sketch of the herring gull. So that's it for today. I hope you found this video useful. If you enjoyed it, then give me a like, subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions or want to see something specific, then let me know below. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, happy sketching!